Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Not Just Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Dominic de Moura McCarthy, and thanks for joining us for another episode. Really excited to have a guest in the studio today. Our guest is Dylan Mail, Dr. Dylan Mail. Dylan, thank you
Hello,
for coming.
everyone. Thanks for having me, Dom.
It's a real pleasure to have you here in Cairns. And I was saying before how we always catch up in random parts of the world: Tonga, Darwin, Magnetic Island, Melbourne. So really keen to have you on the podcast, particularly with your background, working and studying across Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Australia, and all the other international projects and programs you've been a part of. And really a niche area that you work in, which is really important for the future of our region and the future of our livelihoods. So can you share a little bit about your background and the work you do?
Yeah, thanks, Dom. So a bit about me and my background. I grew up in rural New South Wales near a town called Wagga Wagga. Both my parents are from generational farming families. Growing up on a farm, it was such a great lifestyle. You know, you had wide open spaces. We had sheep, we had cattle, we had crops and everything like that. But at the same time, I grew up during a time where Australia experienced drought, pretty much a decade-long drought called the Millennium Drought, and kind of saw how the devastating effects of that on my own family farm and rural communities. So as I was growing up, thinking about what career pathway I wanted to go down, I always had that attachment to agriculture, but seeing how kind of vulnerable food systems were from a young age, I wanted to pursue a career where I could kind of contribute to improving the resilience of, I guess, our food systems and our farms and all that. So I went on to do a Bachelor of Agricultural Science at Charles Sturt University in Wagga campus. And it was a great degree in the sense of kind of learning all the ins and outs of our food system and the science that underpins it. So, you know, we had studied subjects such as botany, plant science, soil science, also animal anatomy, physiology, all of that stuff. But it was very focused on Australian broadacre farming systems. So, you know, a lot of cropping introduced species such as like wheat, pastures, grazing with sheep and cattle, which is, interesting, very important as well. But during my third year of agricultural science, I had an opportunity to do a placement. It was an internship on a horticultural farm on the big island of Hawaii. And I was just like, first of all, Hawaii seems like an epic location to go. But I jumped on the opportunity and ended up in Hawaii for a 5-week internship. And just for the first time, I kind of saw food systems that were different to the ones that I kind of grew up embedded in, and learn about, for the first time, kind of also more deeply a culture other than my own. So Native Hawaiians, there was a lot of kind of engagement with them in this program that I was on. So I came back to Australia with kind of a bit of a renewed perspective. Kind of really liked as well all the diverse plants and food plants that were grown in Hawaii. Like I saw papaya for the first time, for example, and it was so yummy and beautiful produce. A lot of coconuts, you know, all of that. Pineapple, of course.
Yeah.
So I came back and I had a bit of an itch to get back to the Pacific. And in my it was actually soon after I got back, I came across the new Colombo Plan, of course, which you're quite familiar with, Dom. And that's how we kind of first initially connected. And ended up putting forward an application to go and study and intern in Papua New Guinea. And it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I guess at the time, I didn't know too much about PNG. I think like amongst a lot of Australians, even though PNG is our closest country, right, there's a real lack of understanding of PNG within Australia. Sometimes we know about kind of the connections through wartime, but we don't know, a whole lot about the culture and the people and the opportunities in PNG. So that's what kind of led me to really consider PNG, because I was like, I don't know too much, and it's our closest neighbor, so I feel like I should. And of course, in agriculture, a lot of the population in PNG depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, subsistence farming and cash income farming, and great diversity and different crops there. So from an agricultural perspective, I love the idea of that. And also my university, Charles Sturt, had a good connection with the PNG University of Technology there in Lae. So lined up to do my honours research there, working on cow, Binatang blow cow. So sweet potato being one of the staple foods in PNG, there's amazing kind of diversity in sweet potatoes there. Not sure, here in Australia, you go to the supermarket, it's the orange sweet potato, but I'll tell you what, like that tastes, like cardboard compared to some of the sweet potatoes in PNG. But because the PNG population's exploded, it's being farmed more intensely, and there's increasing pressures from pests. So there's these bugs, these weevils that are, destroying cow crops. So I got to work on a project doing some research into that, which was, really cool. And so I was in PNG for about, I think like 7 months in total. And I really was kind of thrown in the deep end into life in PNG. At Unitech, I was kind of the first probably Australian student they've had in a long time. And yeah,
Were there any other foreign students, like exchange students?
No, there wasn't. It was just kind of me. So I was like, okay, I got to try to make friends. I was walking around campus. I think everyone was like looking at me like, who is this guy from Australia visiting? And I think at first some people were maybe a bit intimidated to come up to me. I think I was the same. But once I kind of, so one of the big things about PNG and the people there, they're so hospitable, so welcoming. Like it was only a matter of, a couple of days before I kind of formed close friendships with people there, and they really looked out for me and were so proud to share their culture and their day-to-day life with me. So I got to, I was just like shadowing all my friends around Lae, the ag students there at PNG Unitech. We went up on a trip to the highlands all the way to Enga, visiting all these different places and hearing so many stories. And it was, by the time I left PNG, I was really sad at the end of it, because I felt like it became like my second home, and I kind of came back to Australia. And I just remember going into like such strong reverse culture shock, because the pace of life was so different and all of that. But that was kind of that's a bit of background into me.
Was there a bit of a break between that and then your time in Solomon Islands?
Yeah, that's right. So while I was in PNG, I was fortunate enough to line up an internship with the High Commission in Honiara. So I came back to Australia for a couple of months and then went over to Solomon's, and that was another great opportunity to see another part of Melanesia, very similarly culturally diverse, beautiful, welcoming, warm people. And during that internship, I got to learn a bit more about the Australian aid program and the projects that we are funding in co-partnership with other bodies around the world. And especially in terms of rural development, agricultural development, so supporting projects in things like cocoa, coconut, all of that. So that was my time. I was there for about 3 months before the pandemic hit, and then had to return home.
Yeah, wonderful. And that was at the time when we came together to establish the Pacific Australia Youth Association, PAYA, along with Hannah, our other co-founder. Feels like a lifetime ago.
You are
one of the co-founders.
Alongside Dom and, as you mentioned, Hannah. Remember, we came back from the Pacific and we formed such amazing friendships, and we enjoyed our time so much. But when we were there as well, I think we just kind of realized that there was a gap in kind of mutual understanding of, that we had of the Pacific, and as well as our counterparts and our peers that we met along the way, and their knowledge and understanding of Australia. So we came back and we really wanted to, first of all, keep those friendships going. So we started a group chat, right?
Yep.
And we just
Facebook Messenger.
yeah,
I think we had like over 20 people,
yeah,
a few different countries represented.
yep,
And that was really the start of it, like just sharing where people were from, sharing our experiences there. It was really like an organic beginning, a grassroots beginning, which is nice to build things from the bottom up rather than, I think some organizations tend to take more top-down approach,
yep.
which doesn't work when you're working across the Pacific.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. We had like no structure or anything, just a kind of a group chat, a bit of a maybe vision that, if we get our new friendships and we come together, maybe that could become something. And of course, it has years down the track now. The Pacific Australia Youth Association, check them out if you haven't, because it's an amazing association that's bringing together youth across Australia and the Pacific through a myriad of different events and programs, and of course the flagship Youth Leadership Summit, which is an opportunity for young people to connect across the Pacific, but also develop their youth leadership skills.
Yeah, and so through the Youth Leadership Summit that you mentioned that PAYA hosts, you came to our event in Tonga. So at that point, you weren't no longer volunteering with PAYA, but you were able to come back a few years later and participate in the Youth Leadership Summit. I guess from like Hawaii to PNG, Lae to Solomon Islands, and then over to Tonga. What did you learn in the Tongan perspective, and what did it kind of reinforce what you were doing or bring new perspectives? How did
Yeah.
that experience that week in Tonga kind of contribute to your work?
Yeah. Each of my experiences in the Pacific, there's been so much to take away each time I go. I think one of the big things I always walk away feeling is just that sense of community. Each Pacific kind of community I go and visit, they're so community minded. And you really feel that energy. And, sometimes I feel like it's a big thing here in Australia too, but we can be a bit disconnected from community sometimes. So it really reinforced that for me. And I think that's what draws me to the Pacific so much, is really at the end of the day, the people. So yeah, Tonga was there for a week, part of the Youth Leadership Summit, met youth from how many different countries were probably there? There was good representation.
Yeah, maybe 10 even.
Yeah.
There was pretty good representation, yeah.
Yeah, and got to really, we went out and visited communities and got that sense of what Tonga culture is. And it's just always really interesting. I feel like there's shared things in these experiences, right? You realize that humans have more in common than differences, and you can know nothing about a different culture and that, but when you go there, it's the best way, that lived experience in a place. Even in Tonga, it was just a week. I feel like there's so much more. You only touch the surface, really, but yeah.
And then you have since then completed your PhD. Talk us through what you studied in the PhD, because it all relates to obviously your experiences in the Pacific and then your work in Australia.
Very much after coming back from PNG, seeing, as an agricultural scientist, seeing how every community you go to have their food gardens, right? And it's customary land, people own the land. And reflecting on the food system here in Australia, where it's very private, land's privately owned. All our agricultural crops are kind of, it's business. We export most of our food that we produce here. And realizing that my parents, both generations of farming families, but kind of realizing, the deep connection to country that Papua New Guineans had, the Hawaiians had, and thinking about, First Nations people in Australia, and that I'd never really learnt too much about their connection to land and agriculture. So I came across a PhD opportunity with the University of Melbourne to support a First Nations group in Victoria in their vision to develop one of their Indigenous food plants into a contemporary crop. Because in Australia, we have so many native food plants that are completely underutilized, but yet sustained people here for tens of thousands of years and really, allowed them to flourish. So there's so many different food plants here, but learn a lot about that. And hopefully in the future, we can, support the greater inclusion of bush food plants in our diets, and especially so they can benefit First Nations communities here who are really
It was a
disproportionately.
wheat, wasn't it? You mentioned.
It was a grass, yeah.
Yeah.
So it produced a small grain.
Yeah.
So small grain that you could grind into flour and that.
Yeah.
So most of the world's food, like plant energy, that we eat comes from three grasses: wheat, corn, and rice. Yet there's literally hundreds, thousands of different food plants. So there's such value in having that diversity. But so I just looked at things like when to plant the crop, when to harvest, how to manage it, how to manage the weeds, which different varieties are high yielding, all of that stuff, which is fascinating.
And with that research, has that helped the community there now kind of start
Yeah.
to produce it on a bigger quantity or commercialize it?
That's right. So the group I was working with, Jarrah, who represent the Jar Jarrong people of Central Victoria, they now have their own enterprise where they're kind of developing a bush food kind of business. And so they've got kangaroo grass, which is what I studied, planted there. And they've also, they've got these big dams of yabbies, which they are commercially growing as well as kind of another kind of thing to benefit a lot of socioeconomic opportunities for them. So I think it was my experience in the Pacific, and that kind of changed my perspective and made me realize, there is that kind of, in Australia, there's just a bit of a different context with Indigenous people here who have missed out on a lot of the prosperity of our country and wanting to, try to shift that a little bit. Yeah.
And so that's led you to your current job with
Food Ladder. Yeah.
Food Ladder. So with Food Ladder, you're still continuing this work. Can you share a little bit about what Food Ladder does?
Yeah. So I ended up finishing my PhD, and one of my old professors called me and were like, "Hey, Dylan, have you heard of Food Ladder?" And I hadn't at the time. Did a bit of a research dive into the organization, and it's an Australian non-for-profit that is, trying to address food insecurity across Australia through installing hydroponic, climate-adapted greenhouses into the heart of communities in schools. So, especially in remote Australia, where a lot of fresh vegetables, it's just not available in remote communities. It's too expensive, or if it gets there, it's very poor quality. So, like the state of Australia thinks we're food secure. We think we're a food secure country, but so many of us are actually food insecure. And so we're in 50 plus schools across Australia now, trying to provide children with year-round access to fresh food grown by themselves. With some great impacts, and so many. It's been a privilege to travel around Australia and visit our communities that we work with and seeing the impact of the program.
So through all these experiences, I guess, in the agriculture and food security space, what have you learned about leadership? Because you're definitely charting quite a unique path, working in this area across the Pacific and Australia. And I guess you've probably had to step out a lot on your own, particularly with your NCP program, with, working in a small not-for-profit. You have to kind of take a risk and step up and be a leader, because otherwise, you might not have that opportunity. So what have you learned across the journey about leadership through it all?
Yeah, I think for me, leadership and being a leader, growing up, I always thought it was something reserved for other people, not actually me, myself. And, you always think of leadership like it's a complete misconception, which is what I've come to learn, is that leadership roles are reserved for a certain type of person. But the more experience I've had and the more opportunities I've taken, the more examples of leadership I've been able to see. And often it's, young people really leading kind of the way and maybe not actually realizing they're leaders or they're on the path of becoming a leader. And it's something that, in my roles now and where I am now, it's that realizing that, I am stepping into a space of leadership and feeling the responsibility that comes with that, and taking it, being honored to kind of, go build myself up to be in leadership positions, and, kind of being able to serve others. It's so rewarding. And I think that's something I have learnt to appreciate as I've gone through my journey, that there's so much, you get so much out of helping others. And that what really drives me.
Yeah. And because we do have a big audience from PNG, so I know you're a Tok Pisin speaker. I'm starting out, so I'm not so good. But put you on the spot, anything you can say in Tok Pisin to encourage? It's been
Yeah, Milus Ting Ting Lick Lick Tok Pisin.
any encouragement for the PNG youth out there, because PNG is a country full of opportunities, but also full of challenges too.
Yeah.
And as you know, the youth there are very enterprising and very energetic and keen to take on new opportunities. So it can be in Tok Pisin.
I think if you go back to my Facebook from 2019, me and Hannah Brimstone, we did a video in Tok Pisin where my Tok Pisin was so much more fluent than it is now, and we're talking about how our time there, reflecting on it, and how much opportunity there is in PNG. But yeah, PNG, I'm still in Lewa Blomi. I fell in love with PNG and I've been back since. And I guess my encouragement for youth in PNG is like, the future is yours to design. Like, there's so much opportunity. I just think in agriculture and, the largely predominantly rural population there and all the opportunities that come with that. But really back yourselves and there's so much opportunity in PNG.
Yeah. And being here in Cairns, it's only a 1 hour flight away. So
it is, yeah,
no excuses for those of us like me who are based in Cairns.
To get up there. No, you can be up and back in a day.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. 7 a.m. flight over and then 5 p.m. flight back.
Yeah.
So I'll hope to try it out soon. But yeah, thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Dr. Mayo, for joining us. It's spontaneous episode, but always good to look back on the journey and reflect on the years together. And we've been working together now for a number of years. So it's funny, the places you find yourself in, and as life progresses, we're talking before about scholarship applications and how, just from 1 year to the next, how much it can change. So yeah, it's always nice to go on the journey together with like-minded people and support each other and build up this network and community. So thanks for joining us on the Not Just Leadership podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Dylan.